In this video, I'm going to outline a strategy where you can become a successful HMO operator without actually buying any property whatsoever. I'm going to tell you about a strategy known as rent to rent and how it can be successfully applied to a house in multiple occupation. Hi, my name is Mark Lloyd. I'm co-founder of Property Master Academy and I've been investing in property since 2005. So firstly, why should you consider rent to rent for an HMO business? Well, number one, you don't need to buy any property. This is one of the few property opportunities where that is actually possible. Number two, you need much less money. You won't need a deposit for a mortgage, for example. You'll only need a relatively small amount for finding tenants and doing the administration. Number three, there is much less risk. With rent to rent, it doesn't matter if property prices go down in future or if interest rates rise, and there is no long-term commitment. Number four, the yields with rent to rent are exactly the same as with buying property, and potentially the profits could be higher. It's only fair to point out that there is a downside. Just setting up the rent to rent arrangement as well as running the HMO can involve a lot of work. So you need to be prepared for that. Now, what exactly is rent to rent? Well, you may have heard of rent to rent already. It has become quite popular in recent years in many formats. But normally when you let HMO rooms or any other property, you have to buy the property first so you can let it out. Well, with rent to rent, however, you rent a property from an owner rather than buying it and then let the rooms out. So rent to rent is very simple in theory, and although it's not always that simple in practice, it is a proven strategy that really does work. And many people ask, why on earth would a property owner agree a rent to rent deal when they could rent out their property as an HMO themselves? Well, the answer is that it is much easier for the owner. Some people simply can't be bothered to rent out the property themselves. Others don't really know how to do it successfully. And by entering into a rent to rent agreement, they can receive a regular income from their property for zero work on their part. Now, you might wonder if rent to rent is legal. Well, it's fair to say that rent to rent has got a bit of a bad reputation in the past. That's perhaps because some shady operators have rented a property and let it out without telling the owner. This is not what I'm suggesting here, not what I'm talking about. Rent to rent is perfectly legal if done correctly, but you must only do it with the agreement of the property owner. By the way, you should also notify other interested parties, such as any mortgage lender, the property's insurers, and local council if the HMO needs to be licensed. Next, let's look at how to find a property for a rent to rent. Well, the good news is that there are no particular secrets here. The basics are the same as for any other HMO. A rent to rent can be any type of HMO. It can be a professional HMO, a student HMO, a contractor HMO, or an HMO for people on benefits. Just with any other HMO, the property needs to be suitable for use as an HMO, and it needs to be in an area with good demand. I've put together some other videos which cover these particular topics, so check out our channel. There are a few ways you can find properties to rent and then turn them into an HMO. You can look for properties that are already up for rent that could be used as an HMO. For example, large properties with 4 or 5 bedrooms can be difficult to rent to a single family, but they might make an ideal HMO. You can look for those who own a large property which they don't want to sell, but which they would like to make an income from. For example, those who are working away or who have inherited a house. You can look for properties that are up for sale, but which won't sell. Now, if there is a downturn in the property market, as some people are forecasting, this could work very well. You can look for properties that are already HMOs, but where the owner has lost interest in their business or is struggling to make it work. If you do this, I suggest that you look carefully at the HMO and at ways in which you could add value to it. So, for example, maybe the owner has a student HMO which they are struggling to let, and maybe it would work better as a contractor or professional HMO. Maybe their HMO is a bit tired and dated, and maybe some renovations and improvements would make it much more lettable and would earn higher room rents. Now, how to do a rent-to-rent deal? Well, with every rent-to-rent, you'll need to come to an arrangement with the owner. You'll need to agree how to split the rental income. You'll need to agree how to split the expenses. It's usual for the owner to pay for maintenance, as with any buy-to-let. The operator, that's you, covers the utility bills and admin costs. Now, there's no set formula for deciding this. You'll need to do your sums and perhaps negotiate with the owner. I'd also recommend that you have a lawyer draft out any agreement to cover everything. The ideal situation is to aim to pay the owner the monthly rent they could expect from the house as a single family let. Then let the property by the room on a weekly basis. The total monthly rental value of an HMO will always be much more than that of a single family let. That difference is your profit margin after expenses. So here's a simple example. Say you set up a rent-to-rent arrangement for a large house which has a rental value when let to one tenant of £1,800 a month. Now let's say you rent it out as an HMO with 6 rooms at £130 per week. That would earn you about £3,380 per month when averaged out across the year. That's a £1,580 a month gross profit. Now, of course, yes, you would have to pay day-to-day running costs from that, but you would not be meeting any mortgage repayments, nor paying for any maintenance. What regulations apply to rent-to-rent HMOs? Well, there's no special or additional regulations that apply to a rent-to-rent HMO over those which apply to any other HMO. Your HMO will need to meet the same amenity and safety standards, and it will be subject to the same planning and licensing requirements. I've put together some other videos which explain these things in more detail. One last very important thing I should say about rent-to-rent. You don't have to choose between buying HMOs and rent-to-renting HMOs. You could do either, or you could do both. In fact, you don't have to do rent-to-rent at all. But I'm sure you'll be able to see that whether you want to get into HMOs with very little money or grow your portfolio fast, rent-to-rent is an interesting and exciting strategy indeed. If you've enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button so that others just like you will get to see it, and also subscribe to our channel so you get notified of other videos that we post each week. Appearing on your screen right now will be more videos that will help you in your property business. Thanks for listening.